In 1916, when the National Park Service was created, its two great leaders, Stephen Mather and Horace Albright, intuitively understood the wisdom and the challenge of Theodore Roosevelt's words. Surely the people don't understand. Surely they need to. And surely we must tell them. So in the 1920s, when Albright was superintendent of Yellowstone, he oversaw the creation of a special branch of the Ranger Corps known as Ranger Naturalists. Their sole mission was to explain, to interpret, and to celebrate Yellowstone and everything it meant. And Albright's exhortation to his Ranger Naturalists in the 1920s still rings true today. This was the kind of talk that put fire into the hearts of generations of park rangers, including mine. Imagine the pride those rangers felt when Albright told them, "We are the faculty of the biggest summer school of nature study on Earth." That was heady stuff, and it was a mighty ambition that was not going to be fulfilled by the National Park Service alone. Instead, it has been fulfilled again and again in many parks through what has become a national park tradition, one that we're celebrating here, inviting the public to help the parks help the public. In 1928, thanks to the patient and persuasive salesmanship of Mather, Albright, and others, the Laura Spelman Rockefeller Memorial agreed to fund the construction of 4 museums in Yellowstone. By late 1929, the Park Service, in cooperation with another great educational institution, the American Association of Museums, completed the first of those museums right here at Old Faithful. That museum remained in business for 40 years. And I'm sure some of you here, in fact, how many have worked at the original Old Faithful Museum? Say before 1970? I was. Well, I sort of was. In 1962, our family made the classic summer vacation trip, and we came here, and I must have seen it, but as an oblivious teenager, I don't even remember the end. But I might mention that if this is your first visit, make an effort to see the other 3 that are still here. They're lovely, wonderful examples of what Suzanne referred to as architecture at Madison, Norris, and Fishing Bridge. Wonderful buildings. Well, when you study the history of construction here at the Upper Geyser Basin, you pretty quickly start to feel like the archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann digging down through the layers of Troy. So much has changed, so much has gone on. In the 1880s, a bunch of buildings occupied some of this space back here. They were mostly devoted to stagecoach operations. And I think most of them were sort of that way, sort of in the Old Faithful Inn parking lot. But we are sure that the original museum sat right where the present Visitor Education Center now sits. And the original museum's amphitheater for all of those wonderful campfire programs was right beyond it. That was built in 1930. These first park museums were called trailside museums. That's because from the beginning, the implicit emphasis was not on the museum, but on the trail, the park experience itself. The rangers, then and now, never let you forget that the real show, the real wonder, was not in there, it was out here. As it happens, just by chance, the years of my own working involvement with Yellowstone are nicely bracketed between 2 historic events. One of these is the opening of the new Old Faithful Visitor Center. The other is the opening of the new Old Faithful Visitor Center. In the spring of 1972, one of the high points of the orientation tour for us freshly minted Ranger Naturalists was the equally new Visitor Center, which had just replaced the original museum on this same spot. And I'm sure almost all of you have been in that building. Now, this isn't quite history yet, but I don't mind telling you that that second building has generated an enormous amount of folklore, at least among the staff. For one thing, after those Ranger Naturalists and other staff froze through a couple of Yellowstone's ferocious winters in the building, there arose an enduring mythic conviction that the building had, in fact, originally been designed for Death Valley. I've left that out of all of my books. But I'm not going to speak ill of that building here because it did its job. Millions and millions of people came through it, found what they needed to know to set them out on the Yellowstone Trail. Besides, that second Old Faithful Visitor Center reflected historic changes in American life. In the great suburbanizing and community planning boom of the 1940s and 1950s, there was a dramatic centralizing of civic services. Most of us here, I think, remember that. We lived through it. It was just a part of our life. The example most of us would think of first nowadays is the way we bought stuff, the rise of the shopping center. Suddenly everything in society needed to be centralized, and park planners embraced this trend. And in the 1950s, many park museums were widely recast as more versatile facilities and were renamed visitor centers. By 1972, even someone as young and clueless as I was could sense the energy and hope with which a new visitor center was opened. That year, the new Old Faithful Visitor Center personified the highest hopes of National Park Service educational programs. The tone of the times was clear in the visitor center's futuristically named satellite theaters. I remember hearing that term on our orientation tour and thinking, ooh, satellites. Well, maybe I was a little too easy to impress back then, but I don't think I am now. And I can tell you that the excitement we felt in 1972, we should feel even more intensely today. There we were, and here we are, suddenly possessed of a powerful new tool for celebrating Yellowstone. In a few minutes, you'll enter this place and see why we are poised as never before to empower our visitors to enjoy and understand the park. There's one other part of the saga of visitor education here that I'd like to consider for a moment. Thanks to the wonderful innovations in exhibitry that you're about to enjoy, we tell the story of Yellowstone differently than we used to. But we also tell a different story. Most of all, we tell a much bigger story. As Horace Albright 80 years ago envisioned the educational mission, the ranger naturalists would offer fairly straightforward nature lessons where we could learn how to tell the larkspur from the lupin, or how geysers worked, or what was that big black bird I just saw, or any of the countless other things that we all always want to ask the ranger. Like my all-time personal favorite, when's the best time to see the gibbons in Gibbon Meadow? But in any age, whether the 1920s or the 2010s, you don't gather up a bunch of passionate, well-informed nature enthusiasts and give them ranger uniforms and turn them loose on the public and expect them to stick to that narrow script. Yes, we need to answer those important nature study questions. But there were bigger questions, many of them with imponderable answers. When we speak for Yellowstone now, we speak not just for the specifics of nature, but for the value and the meaning of nature. Not just for the beauty of wild things, but for the essential roles that wildness has in sustaining our character as a nation. These changes in our message were really well underway by the time I showed up in 1972. Right then, of course, we were swept up in the excitement and the optimism of Earth Day. There was a world to save, and who better to tell the world how to go about saving itself than us rangers? Looking back, I'm both proud of our determination and a little chagrined at our confidence. But our ambition was just a reflection of the changing role of national parks in our society and in the world. Yellowstone National Park was originally established for perfectly sufficient reasons to preserve all of this, all these geothermal wonders. But before long, Yellowstone became a vast wildlife reserve, and then it became a vast scientific laboratory, and then it became the preserver of cultural heritages as ancient as the last ice age and as recent as the stagecoach days of the Old West. Today, Yellowstone has assumed a daunting array of other even more complicated responsibilities as a model of conservation stewardship, as a barometer of planetary health, and as a source of strength and renewal for 100 spiritual traditions. That's a lot to ask, even of a place as special as Yellowstone, but it's all part of the Yellowstone story we want to tell now. At the same time, that we must never forget the importance of knowing the larkspur from the lupin. There's more to say all the time. Theodore Roosevelt's lament that we do not yet understand what the parks have to offer us is still true. Every day, we work to understand Yellowstone again in light of new science, new needs, and new dreams. We have learned to cherish Yellowstone not only for all it has given us so far, but also for all the things that it keeps in trust for us until the day we are wise enough to recognize them. In the meantime, Yellowstone's friends have come through yet again. Thanks to all of you, we have a visitor education center beyond the wildest dreams of Theodore Roosevelt, Horace Albright, and all of us aging rangers.
Oh,
Everybody look at the geyser.
good job, Suzanne.
Everybody need to stand up, eh? That's a good one, too.
Suzanne, nice punctuation mark there.
Yeah.
Way to go.
You called it out. Yeah.
And as it turns out, that was my last sentence. Thank you.
You can't.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I don't think it gets any better than that. We knew that it would happen during the course of today's event, so we're really pleased that we were all still seated here today. Paul, thank you very much. Thank you for reminding us who we are, why we do what we do. You know, one of the other things I wanted to mention to you, I'm glad I waited till the end. You know, you're being live streamed on a webcam this morning, so make sure you wave to all your family and friends back home who might be logged on this morning, watching for you. But you know, this occasion this morning isn't just about those of all of us that are on the stage and our wonderful special guest. It truly is about all of you, the park visitor and the park resource. So now I'm going to tell you it's time to raise those pendants and salute yourselves, salute our donors, salute our special guests, and most of all, salute Old Faithful who just saluted us and keeps us happy even after more than a century. You know, we're about to open those doors and let you in and let you look firsthand at what you've been hearing about. But you know, this morning I got a special friend who's going to help me make this happen. I got a very young visitor this morning who's waiting to help lead all of you into that building. And his name is Sam. It's Sam Galindo.